A reading from James chapter 5, beginning at verse 7. Be patient, therefore, brothers, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, being patient about it, until it receives the early and the late rains. You also be patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. Do not grumble against one another, brothers, so that you may not be judged. Behold, the judge is standing at the door. As an example of suffering and patience, brothers, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. This reading is all about patience, and it is giving examples of the farmer who waits patiently. You sow the seed, and in Israel you had 2 main rains, and you wait for the rainy seasons to come, and there is patience involved. And this same patience is being urged by James on his readers. And patience is very much, I would suggest, a theme of Advent too. Because we look back to the birth of Christ at Advent, and Advent is a period where we remember and we prepare to celebrate the birth of Christ, but we also look forward to Christ's return. These are the 2 Advents, or the 2 comings of Christ, that in humility as he was born in Bethlehem, that in glory as he returns, as the Creed puts it, to judge the living and the dead. And in between, well, we have to be patient. And you wonder quite why. Quite why does this take so long? And then you begin to think, well, perhaps because of this length of time that we're waiting, 2,000 years and counting, maybe the New Testament got it wrong. But Peter, that great apostle, when he's writing in 2 Peter, he's keen to point out that God's timetables are slightly different, in fact, utterly different from our timetables. He's keen to show that God works to a different time scale. He writes, "But do not overlook this one fact, beloved, that with the Lord one day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as one day." So yes, we are used to measuring out our life in decades and lifetimes, but God has a greater time scale. After all, the great prophecies in Psalm 22 uttered by David, well, they took 1,000 years to come to pass. God's timing is not our timing. But why the delay? Why the great length? Well, Peter carries on. "The Lord is not slow to fulfill his promise, as some count slowness, but is patient toward you, not wishing that any should perish, but that all should reach repentance." But, he carries on, "the day of the Lord will come like a thief, and then the heavens will pass away with a roar, and the heavenly bodies will be burned up and dissolved, and the earth and the works that are done on it will be exposed." So Peter here then is saying that God's slowness, as we understand slowness, is not because he's being slow or tardy, but rather he's being merciful. I was converted in my 20s, and I'm grateful that God's slowness and his mercy enabled me to get to my 20s, and so I could be converted. So God's slowness is merciful. He's patient, waiting for people to come to faith in him. But as we saw in Peter, that doesn't mean we should take such things for granted, because all of a sudden, God will come. All of a sudden, the day of the Lord, as it was called throughout the Old Testaments, will occur. So try and live with that patient expectation, that gladness that God is merciful, that gratitude that God has been patient with us, but also knowing that the Lord is near. And so we live as those who know that at some stage we shall meet with him. So as we look at Advent, as we look back to Christ 2,000 years ago and look forward to, whenever it will occur, his return in glory, we do so patiently, knowing that we have a God who is merciful, who longs for all to come to faith in him.